to hearing the history behind another song that you and Mrs. Garlock wrote. What song are we looking at this time?
We're going to be looking at All We Have Belongs to Jesus.
Great.
And originally, of course, it was All I Have. But I made it for both of us because she was really a part of writing it for me.
Oh, yes.
And right here, Tim, I'd like to just say something about you and me.
Mm-hmm.
About we have interest in all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And as a teacher, I always make a spiritual application. And I think you do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're trying to do with our podcasts is actually we include other things that are maybe distantly related,
mm-hmm.
but to us, they fit what we're talking about.
Sure.
Because, for instance, I remember when I may have talked about this before, let me mention it again.
Sure.
And when we had 2 semesters, when I was teaching at Bob Jones University, and I had anywhere from 75 to 100 theory students,
mm-hmm.
talking about grading papers.
Oh, wow.
Hours worth of paper grading.
Yes.
But I remember at the end of the first semester when I would hand back their exams to them, and there'd be red marks all over it.
Mm-hmm.
Looked like somebody bled all over it. I would say to the students, I said, I knew what was going to be on the exam back in September
mm-hmm.
at the beginning of the semester.
Mm-hmm.
You should have been listening to me. I was trying to get you ready for this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say, you know what? I already know what's going to be on your final exam when it comes up at the end of the spring, May
mm-hmm.
or June, whatever it was back then.
Right.
And this next semester, I'm going to try to get you. I think you better listen to me.
Yes.
And then I would apply it. I would say, some of you are wondering why you're having some difficulty. Maybe you're having financial trouble. Maybe you're having trouble getting the right grades.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't understand what's going on. Maybe you're having health problems. You don't understand what God is doing. Let me just tell you now, God's getting you ready for the future.
Yes.
You better listen to God. And I've had so many students come back and say, I forgot what you taught me about theory, but I remember that.
Yes, yeah.
So that's what you and I do. So
mm-hmm.
as we talk about these songs, we're going to relate it to everything that we can.
Good.
Because it's always fascinating to study how various composers and poets write.
Yeah.
I got an email from a lady not long ago. She wanted me or somebody else to send some of her poems to music.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, send me some and I'll look at it.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I looked at it, I wrote back to her and said, look, you're a good poet,
mm-hmm.
but your poems will not work in music.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be a lyricist to do that, and that's different.
Yeah,
and I gave her some quotes by lyricists
mm-hmm.
who said that's the hardest thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So some get it all in their minds before they write it down. This is composers. Others start with an idea, and they have to work it out gradually. And others keep changing what they've written till they are satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure where I belong. I think maybe in all 3 categories. Because some people ask me how I write, and sometimes I go back, even now, I go back and look at things and say, I think I need to change that a little bit. I think I can make it better.
Yep.
This song that we're talking about was actually written for Gina, our daughter, and David, my son-in-law, when they were married.
Mm.
The tune is named Green in honor of their last name.
Mm-hmm.
The original song title was as it is here. All We Have Belongs to Jesus. Fits Flora Jean's and my lives together, and also what we hope for Gina and David.
Mm-hmm.
However, because some people wanted to sing it as a solo, it became All I Have Belongs to Jesus in the Majesty hymn books.
Oh, okay.
The basic archetype, a current symbol or motive, that is put into service for word painting in this song is the repetition of notes in both the melody and the bass line.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I've been privileged to officiate on a wedding, I was always emphasized the covenant being made that should never be broken.
Mm-hmm.
That is what all the repetition or the pedal point in this song symbolizes.
Mm-hmm.
It is the underlying principle of the whole song, both words and music, and it's found in all 4 voices, all 4 parts, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at, for instance, you look at the bass, it says da, di, da, 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 repeats the D, and when it goes to the next line, repeats the G. And then you look at the soprano, stays on the F sharp, da, 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 and then da, da, repeats the E several times. And even the tenor just moves up chromatically the alto stays on D so much. It's saying, it's painting the words here that everything we have belongs to God.
Right.
I'm not holding anything back.
Exactly.
And it shows a solidarity, I guess would be the right word, of purpose.
Yes.
And I think the music needs to portray that.
Mm-hmm.
And don't you think the best way is just to have repetition do that?
Yeah.
Is there any a better way to do it, you think?
No.
We call it an archetype.
Right.
And sometimes we use a contrary motion for contrast, or sometimes we use parallel motion. But I think in a case like this with this song, our best thing to do is just repeat it.
Yeah.
All I have belongs. So God knows we mean business.
Yeah.
We're not just saying it,
very
we mean
resolute.
it. In fact, there's an unusual double pedal and sometimes even a triple pedal and a quadruple pedal where pedal point is applied for emphasis. To give variety to the song, there are a number of accidentals. Those are notes that are not a part of the main key.
Right.
Can we explain that maybe a little clearer than I just did?
Right. So you'll see that right off the bat in that first measure, that quadruple pedal point he was talking about, where everybody stays on the same note until we get to the last beat of the first measure, and you'll see the tenors move from an A to an A sharp to a B, and that A sharp written in next to that note, that is the accidental because it's not in the key signature, the F sharp, C sharp you see at the beginning of the line, and that A sharp gives that bit of movement in there so that there's always needs to be a balance. When you have a lot of repetition, you need to balance it with some type of variation to give that variety, to keep the interest going, because you want to show the being resolved and having that resoluteness of the pedal point, but then still have a bit of variety in there so we don't lose interest and, it's just the same chord for the whole song.
Now, can you tell what I do with measure 3 going into measure 4? What happens in the tenor there?
Yep. Works right back down. So they're actually singing the same note on beat 4 of measure 3 as they did of beat 4 of measure 1. However, this time it's going down. So you want to write that as a flat so it makes more sense. Since flats go down, we more naturally would think of a flat as a descending line and a sharp in an ascending line.
So you folks that are learning theory from this, you just got a lesson on it as to why the accidentals, the A sharp, then can become B flat, but it's coming down, and one is going up.
Yep.
All right. So then we talked about the double pedal. For instance, after the pedal point and all 4 parts in measures 1 and 9 on counts 1 through 3, the 4th count applies an augmented chord to form a crescendo, and the crescendo is
It's getting louder.
getting louder, increasing the volume in the name of Jesus. See, there it is. This points out that he is the one who gave us what we have, and we are going to give back to him. So you've got that painted musically for you. We're giving it to him, that he gives it back to us.
Right.
Then in measure 2, the second syllable of Jesus is harmonized with that 1/7 flat 7. Isn't that interesting? What makes that so unusual?
Well, typically the 1 chord is a resting chord. It's the home chord. You feel like you're done. But when you add that flat 7 on top, that feels like it needs to move on to somewhere else. You don't feel home, even though it's on the home note. It's on that tonic note. You don't feel like you're home. You feel like you need to go somewhere else, and you're moving on to some other something. Usually the 4 chord, but
and with
can go
different
other places.
terminology, that becomes a secondary dominant.
Exactly.
Because it becomes a major minor 7th, which is a dominant.
Right.
And so that moves in out of that chord naturally.
Yeah, and pushes us onto the 4 chord.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. If you ever study in theory, you study the augmented chords. They sound the same, but they act differently.
Oh, yes.
The 7th goes the other direction. It spreads out to the octave. And so it becomes, depending upon how it's used.
Right.
So you folks are learning some theory that this is what Tim and I teach all the time. And this is, I put down that this is a musical archetype that always demonstrates a special meaning.
Yes.
In measure 3, the B flat paints a sense of gratitude and humility on the words to his own. See, we're actually painting the words constantly in our minds, whether it's conscious or not. The shift to the implied key of A major in measure 7 and 8 help emphasize the stated purpose of dating our lives on all that we have to the Lord. if you look at 7 and 8, for instance, we go into an E major sound with the G sharp in there. And so you're actually going into A major for just 2 measures there. And then on the last part of measure 8, what do we get again?
We get that descending line again. We get a natural. Well, the natural is just going back to the key signature.
Yeah. But it's also what? It's a 1/7 in A major.
Oh, yes.
With a flat 7.
I'm thinking in the wrong key.
I do the same thing, Tim. And it's hard. I'll tell you what, if you study Bach, you got to go through and figure out what he means too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes he's giving you, to lead you astray, and then it goes off someplace else.
Yeah, what key is he actually in?
But here we actually took the key of A and threw in that 1/7. Only this time it was in second inversion. Isn't that interesting?
Yep.
To emphasize the same purpose, dedicating our lives, all that we have, and all that we are and hope to be. See how that fits that? We know what we are now, and we'd like to be all God wants us to be. We might not measure up, but all we are. I always say to the Lord, Lord, I'm not all you want me to be, but Lord, I want you to know I want to be.
Yes.
Show me your will, and I'll try to do it. It doesn't mean I always do it.
Yep.
And then we have a deceptive cadence, an unexpected one, in measures of 11 and 12. Isn't that interesting? It measures 11 and 12, which ends on a 3-sharp 5 chord, or we would call it maybe an F-sharp chord. In D major, that is a startling way of painting hope to be. See, that even gives more emphasis to it. All we are and hope to be, it goes to a chord you don't expect it to go to.
Yeah.
That's called a deceptive cadence. How would you explain that, Tim? A deceptive cadence?
Well, deceptive cadence is, as the term implies, something unexpected that many times brings a freshness to the sound and adds a special emphasis or interest on a certain point. Like in this case, all we are and hope to be.
Yes.
That beautiful chord on that word be just emphasizes the meaning of that phrase.
And you say, well, were you conscious when you did it? I'm not sure, as I've said before, whether I did this. I think Flora Jean was the one. She always was looking for that. If you listen to her piano album, and we're hoping to get it available to some of you, so you can see how she did this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that might probably have been her idea.
To listen to the piano album, there's a link to a playlist in the description of this podcast.
Oh, okay.
And you can click on that link and listen to all the tracks from that album. Just click that link down the bottom. It'll take you to a playlist where you can listen to all the beautiful music that she wrote and arranged, rather, for Preludes of Praise. It has all of the tracks from that recording here in the
And you'll
the
be
description.
amazed at the sounds that she comes up with.
Oh, yes.
And how she knew them.
Yep.
And so we wanted to let you know that. So then we start into the last line of music measure 13. Employs a fully diminished 7th chord.
Nice.
And I have to put fully diminished.
Yes.
So all minor thirds is why that's a chord. That, on the 4th count to lead into our decisive promise of following the Lord wherever he may lead.
Yes.
Again, we're telling the Lord, we're going to follow you. And that chord just goes strongly into that chord, that one chord in the key of D on second inversion with the 9/8 suspension in the soprano, which makes it even stronger. So it highlights the importance of that word. The chordal progression in the last 2 measures, the 2/7, is a musical way of telling God that we want to be his, both now and for all eternity.
Yes.
Wow. And isn't it exciting to think about that? And don't be afraid of studying the book of Revelation. May I encourage you?
Yeah.
I have 2 books on the book of Revelation. One by Dr. Stu Custer, the other one by a Jewish Hebrew man. And I can't think of his name. What is it? He lives in Israel. Let me give you the name of both books. Because that book of Revelation, and you can see how that book paints things. It's called Revealing Revelation, How God's Plan for the Future Can Change Your Life Now, by a man, I probably wouldn't pronounce right, Amir, A-M-I-R. His last name is T-S-A-R-F-A-T-I. Sfarfati, I guess. And he did it with a man named Dr. Rick Young. And they both live in Israel. And one's a teacher, The other one, he lives in Israel, and so when he conducts tours of Israel, and when the bombs come on Israel, he goes into a shelter,
Yeah.
and he wrote this book on the Book of Revelation, and it's a kind of a simple version of the book by Stu Custer, where you can understand it, and he makes it right. He says in the beginning of the book, he wants where people who can't understand all the technical terms, they can understand what he's teaching. And by the way, that's what you and I are doing with music here.
Yep.
We're trying to take down things that are complicated and make them simple enough that you, as a musician, whether you're a choir director, a congregational song leader, whether you're a composer or just a singer or whatever, or if you just play an instrument, the more you understand, the better you'll be able to contribute to the work of God that you're involved in.
Yes, exactly. Good. Thank you for these insights.